New York's classic rock, Q1043.
Good morning. I am rejoined by an actress, writer, producer that I've had on Sonstein Sunday before, and she is Sarah Megan Thomas. She was on Sonstein Sunday 4 years ago, and Lydia Pilcher, who is the director of a movie I'm going to tell you about in a minute, was supposed to be on Sonstein Sunday for a movie that has since been postponed. So it's sort of like we're regrouping for the first time since COVID hit our universe. And the reason that they are joining me this morning, and thank you, ladies, there's a movie that is out now called A Call to Spy. You can see it in theaters. If there's a theater open near you, check that out. But more likely, you'll see it VOD, which is how I watched it. And I call this another Hidden Figures movie. And there are so many. This is based on 3 real life women who were spies during World War II, and very unlikely spies. But first of all, when you think of a World War II spy movie, and remember, this isn't a documentary, it's a narrative, it's a regular film. When you think of spies, when you think of spy movies, you think of men. You don't, it is just so rare. And the fact that this is based on 3 real life women, I'll let Sarah tell you about it because she, well, you wrote it, you produced it, you star in it. You are one of the spies.
Yeah, so it's the first film, like you said, on 3 real female spies in World War II, Virginia Hall, Vera Atkins, and Noor Inayat Khan. And, you know, just like you, when I was doing the research for the film, I knew I wanted to do a spy thriller. I love James Bond for what it is, you know, the car chases, the romance, etc. But I was missing in the genre the female lens, and specifically the grit and determination and psychology it must take day in and day out to be a spy. And so when I discovered Churchill's Secret Army and the women in it, and that a movie had never been made about them, it was just like, this has to be done.
Lydia, how did you come to all of this?
Well, Sarah came to me with her amazing screenplay, and I was very captivated by the story of these 3 women, but also because they were international women. You know, Vera Atkins is from Romania, Noor Inayat Khan is from India and lived in France, and Virginia Hall is American. And the idea that these 3 women came to another country that wasn't their own with a common purpose was fascinating to me. And the kind of, you know, life-risking endeavors that they were willing to take on for this mission was pretty powerful.
So one of the spies is a Romanian Jew who is in England, in London, and is terrified that she is going to be deported because she can't get her papers. So this is the woman who's heading up this whole thing. And then another one is a Muslim woman of Indian descent. Again, you would think, well, Hollywood dreamed up her and put her in for diversity's sake, but she was real. But this really happened, and she was a pacifist. And then Sarah, the person you play, well, you couldn't get the diplomatic career, I'm saying your character couldn't get the diplomatic career she craved in the United States because of her disability and perhaps because of her gender, because she was missing a leg. So not someone you think would be a spy who was blowing up the train tracks in France, in Nazi-occupied France. But this happened. And I always say to myself when I'm watching these movies and watching these stories, and I think to myself, how many other stories like that are out there? And why did we never learn about this at school? And then I wonder, will future generations will they learn about this in school? It just raises so many questions because there are so many stories.
There are so many stories. And look, these women were sent in because they were, quote unquote, inconspicuous and the Germans wouldn't suspect, but they were still sent in with a 50-50 chance of survival, and they should be in our history books. Look, these three women, if you Google them, they have won every award you could possibly win for bravery. You know, the character I played was actually the spy the Nazis dubbed the most dangerous of all Allied spies, male, female, period. Yet she's not in our history books. The other two, you know, Noor was just awarded Britain's Blue Plaque in 2020. So they're very relevant, they're very timely. And to answer your other question, yes, there are so many more stories, and it requires female directors, female producers, female screenwriters to, you know, come to the table and find them. And I think that's starting to happen.
So that brings me to another question. And by the way, we're talking about the movie A Call to Spy, which is now out VOD, and you can also see it in theaters if a movie theater is open near you. But I was wondering, one of the controversies of late in Hollywood or in acting are the new diversity rules that the Oscars will be following. It's really not taking effect till 2023. Do you, Lydia, want to discuss this and explain, you know, the whole issue I'm talking about? Because there are, for a movie to be up for Best Picture, for example, it's going to have some diversity. For an underserved segment of the population, or whether it's gender, or whether it's racial diversity.
Well, I think we're in a moment of cultural reckoning, you know, in our country and in the world. And I think that what we have realized is that the levels of biases are so ingrained in the system, that systemic bias, and how do we address that? So I think there are a lot of conversations that are happening that are big conversations in this way, and are going to be ongoing, you know, in our current future. There are organizations like Reframe. We were gender stamped by Reframe. This is an organization that has been trying to address systemic bias in the industry. So I think the Academy's conversation is part of the bigger conversation.
I think, you know, we would have been hearing more about this had we not been in the middle of a pandemic where everything seems to be on hold. What is your thinking on this, Sarah, Megan, Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic has totally changed how movies are distributed, you know, and for indies specifically, you have to rethink the whole thing. And actually, IFC Films has been really innovative during the pandemic with drive-ins and theaters that are open and on demand. But one of the things I think the pandemic, in terms of the themes of our film, has also shown us is this concept of we're all in this together, which is really the kind of slogan we keep saying, like, this is a global world, like Lydia said. And even though this film largely takes place in 1941, our spies understood that. They came from different backgrounds, they came from different nationalities and religions, and their diversity proved critical to the success of their missions. Noor, as a pacifist, as a wireless, was still able to be hugely successful. Noor, as a fighter, was able to use her skills to be successful. So the point being that we are global, and our diversity can actually elevate and bring us together.
I've had this discussion. I think actually, Lydia, we had this discussion before the shutdown. Radium Girls is a movie that you directed that's going to be coming out in October, but we thought it was coming out like in a week or two before the shutdown in March. And I'm just wondering, now that so many of us are used to being able to see movies, download them, and because of the risk of going to theaters, but also the fact that in most people's mind, you don't have to see every movie that opens in a theater. Do you think this pandemic is going to reshape the way we see movies? Most directors, I have to tell you that I mentioned this, no. Everyone wants to go see a movie in a theater. But the reality is, you know, you have kids at home, you have a busy life. I can watch half the movie now, I could watch half the movie later. The genie is out of the bottle. Lydia?
I do think that the way we have been forced to find workarounds during the pandemic has opened up. You know, I just finished producing a miniseries. We did the entire post remotely across 4 continents. Nobody would have thought that was possible. I'm sure that we're never going to go back to the way things were, But I think this is also a disruption that has been long in the waiting to happen in our industry. And I do think that there are opportunities for independent filmmakers, particularly in the virtual cinema realm. This is a new model that has just come through during the pandemic, where indie distributors are able to sell tickets, share ticket prices with consumers, with affinity groups. And it's remarkable, and it's something that we'll be talking about and hearing a lot more as it's tested through the end of the year.
One of the things I heard, and again, it's all just being floated. It's just a conversation for now because, I mean, at least in our area, you know, for the most part, you can't go see a movie in a theater, or people don't feel safe to go in New Jersey theaters, which are at 25% capacity. There was talk that maybe 5 so-called blockbusters may be pushed by Hollywood a year. The blockbusters, the James Bond movies. And by the way, that's the first one that's supposed to open after Tenet. It's supposed to be coming out in November. We'll see if that happens. But what about that theory that there would be a handful of movies that would be movie theater only, putting all the money, all the promotion behind them in terms of the theaters, and the rest, you watch it whenever you want at home? What do you think of that?
Well, I think that, you know, we're a very diverse country, and we have a population that's interested in all different kinds of stories and all different kinds of movies. So I think that the franchise has taken over the theatrical market, but I believe that we have a very strong art house cinema movement in this country that has not gone away during the pandemic. And I'm very encouraged by all of the partnerships that distributors have made with some of these theaters, and how, you know, how we're holding on to what it is, because storytelling shouldn't be monolithic. It shouldn't be homogenous. It needs to embody the, you know, the wide range of cultures that we have in our country and tell all those stories.
I want you both to address how you've done during this pandemic, because speaking with Lydia, I want you to be speaking with Lydia before we actually started taping. You have a very personal, tragic story from COVID. So I wanted you to tell your story and then find out from you, Sarah, how you've made out in this pandemic.
Well, it's been challenging. I lost my mother to COVID in May, and my daughter was ill with COVID also at the same time. She's very well now, thankfully. You know, but also having a big movie go on hold, and then all of the personal things that go on. It's been a little bit of a maelstrom. You know, we have pulled through it. It's been an amazing you know, global event to have been so personally, directly involved with. But I think, you know, I think in terms of the pandemic, one of the things that really interests me is that we've all had time to think more about our lives. We've had time to think about what's meaningful to us. What should we spend our time doing? And really, what's our purpose? And that, just bringing it back to A Call to Spy, that was the thing about these women that is so inspiring to me, is that they were driven by this sense of purpose. And I think that it's something that we all could benefit from identifying with more, particularly at this moment in our country.
And Sarah, we have to wrap up real fast, but how have you been making out during all this?
Well, I have a 7-year-old who's homeschooling, a husband who works, and I have a newborn baby that's still in the NICU. So it's very challenged. Thank you. But just real quickly, and to all the moms out there with homeschooled children who are young, it is so tough, and the teachers are trying, and it's just, you know, we have to figure out how to educate our children and also do our jobs. And just really quickly too, with the pandemic, you know, this film won the ADL award at SBIAF and had this whole plan of festivals, premieres, etc. that didn't happen. With indie film, those things are crucial. You lose those word of mouth opportunities. So, you know, it's really important that if people want to see these types of stories about women, that they go out and purchase them.
And actually, if you are still homeschooling your child, this is a perfect educational tool available on VOD, A Call to Spy. I highly recommend it. It will just really open your eyes and your horizons. Q104.3.
New York's classic rock. Q1043.